Welcome, everyone, to this week's episode of Backstage. I'm so happy you're here. I just want to say that before I even intro our guest or the topic this week of discussion, I just want to say thank you for being here. I feel like our whole Backstage family has a total subculture going on, and I'm just happy that you're here. I appreciate that you listen. I hope that you're continually encouraged by the interviews and the stories that I bring you. And this week, I know is going to be no different. I'm bringing in Rachel Henry, and she has a very unique story of being happily married, having children, living in a small rural town. And one night when her husband was gone, her house was invaded. 3 men broke in. They sexually assaulted her, robbed her. And this is her, not only her story of that, which she does tell in detail, but also her story of recovery. And it's really impactful. And so I encourage you to listen to this with headphones in, parents, if you're in the car with your kids, because there are a lot of details given. But I walked away encouraged. And I feel like I say that a lot in these episodes that are sometimes more difficult or just sad, that nobody wants to go through something that Rachel went through. But I'm so encouraged by her resilience and her faith and her ability to move forward. And so listen to her story, and I pray that whatever you're going through, I know that not everyone experiences what she experienced, but there are a lot of lessons to be learned as she recovered from this really horrific experience. So enjoy this talk with me and Rachel Henry.
Hi there. Good morning.
Hi.
Sorry that took so long.
No, don't be sorry. I am sorry for how much I'm hoarse and probably going to cough during this.
Oh, you know what? I have not tested myself, but I'm pretty sure I had COVID all last week, so I've got the phlegm in my throat too. So we might just be muting back and forth.
Honestly, same thing. We can't get tests here.
Oh, really?
They're booked until like Thursday or Friday. And so I was telling my husband's up in Oregon. And I was like, babe, I thought I had it last week, but then it's coming back. I don't know what I have. I don't know but I can't test. I had at-home tests over the holidays with my family here because there were babies here and all those things. And those are all long gone now. So I was like, I'm just going to assume at this point that I have it. But thankfully, all of our staff are working remotely today.
Yeah.
So I'm in the building. I'm in the building by myself and Chris, who you were just talking to. And he already had it. So
I know. I was like, at least, I just lost my taste and smell a couple days ago.
Oh, no.
So I'm like, well, at least I know I have it. Like, I don't have to test.
Yeah, you have it. That's the one thing where you know you have it.
Yep. We're supposed to go to Cancun next month. So I was like, okay, good. Now I know that I'll be good to get back home after our trip.
Yeah. And you'll have all those antibodies in you.
Yeah, well, it should be good. So...
Oh my gosh, the taste and smell thing is creepy when you realize it, right?
Yeah, you're like, oh, I think there it went.
Yep. Yeah. Like you can have sniffles and be like, oh, it could just be the common cold. And you can have a headache and be like, oh, I just have a headache. But when your taste and smell goes, it's like, okay, this is happening. Bunker down. Everybody bunker down.
Well, and I'm sorry about if you didn't feel up to it today. I was like, I'm still willing to do it.
Honestly, I totally felt up to it. I just felt bad, like sounding like I do.
I understand.
But you know what?
I feel
the whole point of this podcast is backstage. And so it's like, I want people, because my husband and I pastor in Dallas, North Dallas. And so I always want people to get like the real experience of our life, like behind what they see on a stage. Because I think that's important for vulnerability and for like true leadership. And now they're getting it as I cough all over this podcast.
I feel like my head is in a can. That's like what it sounds like to me right now.
We're in this together. Okay. Can we start with just what happened? Because most likely my listeners won't know.
Yeah.
And so I obviously want to talk about the assault that happened. Was it in 2014?
It was, which it's so hard for me to believe that now, it's been 7.5 years, time just keeps going. And sometimes it feels like yesterday and sometimes it's like a different lifetime ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, still am willing to talk about it and share about it. And I just like hope as time goes by, you know, up until now, every time I've shared it, it's been closer to the event when it happened. And it's like, as I get further away, I almost feel like it loses its, not power, but just like that it's not as important anymore because it was longer ago. And I have to, you know, remind myself like, okay, I don't want Satan to shut me up because I'm like, oh, it was so long ago, it doesn't matter. And that God can still use it despite time. And that's really special with these podcasts too. I've been able to share on a couple now. And still every time I go back, I'm just so overflowing with gratitude and like just amazement at what God has done. And that will probably be that way in 20 years, you know, it's not going to go away. So
yeah. And the story that you're about to tell, it is unfortunately a tale as old as time.
Yes, it really is.
And yeah. And so for you to, I mean, your story, your recovery, your redemption, it will never lose its power because unfortunately there will always be that brand of evil.
So we both graduated from here and went to Indiana Wesleyan University out in middle of nowhere, Indiana. We graduated from there. We had gotten married during college after my sophomore year. So I sometimes feel like I missed out on some of the college experience because I cut it short and then end up even having my first kid before I graduated. And so just kind of really jumped into life, but loved our time there. We loved the university. My husband ended up working for them. And so we just found a lot of great community with the other staff there and the people at our church. And so even though that small town, it wasn't necessarily anything amazing, we just felt so close and connected to our community there. And that's really important. And that has a lot of clout with what happens later, you know? So he was actually starting his doctorate and was going to have to stay on campus for a week. I guess they required everyone, no matter where you live, to come and then live in a dorm for a week during the summer. And all of you kind of start this process together. And so we only lived, 2 blocks from the campus. And so we were really close, but it's when you picture small town Indiana, I don't know, there's some towns that are small and super picturesque and everything looks perfect. And this was more small town, like maybe used to be going on, but had since kind of been run down. And somehow then there's this, I don't know, just kind of not unsafe, but definitely had more of an inner city feel rather than a small town feel.
Gotcha.
So we didn't do a lot in the downtown area, but our house was kind of on a road where people would say, I wouldn't want to live past that road. And then on this side of the road, like, is the college campus and everything looks amazing, you know? So it's a kind of strange coming together of two worlds. And we actually
I've been to those places where one street over, it's a completely different experience.
For sure. So we lived on that road, actually. That's just kind of setting the stage, you know, so you can get a better picture. It was this really small house. We had just bought it within the last year, and we're trying to fix it up so that we could then rent it out after we were done living there. And so he was gone for that week. It was probably the second night he was gone, and our home was broken into. And we obviously didn't have a security system. We did lock our doors, but that night I had left some windows open. It was the middle of July. And I woke up actually hearing some chimes at our back door that I had hung there. And, you know, as the wife in the home, I think usually I would just nudge my husband and say, I hear something.
Go check it out.
Right. As the only adult home, my first response was just to get up and go to check out what it was. I was saying, Simon, is that you? Just not having any comprehension of why he would be coming in. So you're
waking up out of a dead sleep.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is the middle of the night.
Yeah. It was around 2:00 in the morning.
Oh man. Okay. And your kids are all in the house with you?
They're all sleeping. I had 3 of them sleeping upstairs, and then they would take turns sleeping with me when my husband was gone. So I had one of my 4-year-old daughters was in bed with me. Okay. And my bedroom was on the main level. So I walked out of my room, across the living room, into our super tiny kitchen. And there I was confronted with 3 males with their hoods up. And, you know, it was all dark still and their lights were on. And at that point, I don't know what my plan was. I don't know. I had no idea what I was walking into. It could have been very different if they had been violent or been any more threatening. But I basically said, "What do you want?" And they said that they wanted money. Give us all your money. I really, literally did not have any cash in the house. I had just taken it to the bank that week, and I said, "I don't have anything." I think my very short thought was, if I just give them what they want, they'll leave. I don't care what they take. Yep. And so they started asking questions, and they were calm the whole time. There wasn't like it was yelling. They were just talking, and it was super strange because they're in my kitchen.
Yeah, that's so bizarre.
And we're like,
and you're out of a sleep. I can't
apart.
imagine. Right. And you're just like trying to, I would imagine, gather your thoughts. Like it was 3, right?
Yeah, there's 3 of them.
And you're just talking calmly about what they want.
Yeah. And really, you don't even have time to think. I mean, obviously your adrenaline
I can't imagine.
Just instantly kicks in. Like, I did not feel sleepy. Yeah. You know,
my gosh.
I was fully aware and alert in the situation, but still just, it's not like I have time to plan or think ahead as to what I'm going to do or what I'm going to say to them. It's just happening moment by moment. They started asking, like, do you have a phone? And I had left it under my pillow, and because I used to sleep with it there for some reason. And because I had gotten up so quickly, I didn't even think to call 911.
Right.
So I was like, no, I don't have a phone, because I want to give up that I actually had it in the house.
Right.
They said, "Where's your husband?" I said, "He's out of town." They basically were just trying to figure out what they could get from me. And so I don't remember if they talked amongst themselves at that point, but basically they came to the conclusion that 2 of them needed to go look through the house to find anything they wanted to take. And then the other one stayed with me. And I stopped them and I said, "Stop, my children are sleeping." And they turned and they were just like, "We won't even touch your kids. We're just looking for stuff." And I feel like I didn't know what else to do except to trust them and to say, okay.
And so you believed them in that moment.
And I did. I can't go. Obviously, that was really hard. They were, up till that point, I had been between them and my kids. And then letting them go up those stairs was, but kind of at the same time, the other guy came as they're walking by me. The other guy came and got my elbow and started walking me to the back of the house. I really wish I could remember what my thoughts were at that moment, because I really can't remember what I was expecting to happen. Like, I mean, when I think back, I'm like, man, he could have shot me. He could have kicked me out of the house. I don't know. Like, that could have been really terrible. And I just kind of, from what I remember, I just went along with him. And I wasn't fearful. I've had people ask me, "Were you afraid?" And I don't know if I even had time to be afraid. It was just reacting to everything in the moment.
To every moment. Yep.
I felt calm. And I felt like the whole time I was trying to help them see me as a person.
Yeah.
And just talking to them, and not I felt like if I was all frenzied and worked up, then it's like, I'm very obviously acting like a victim. And I didn't want them to see me that way. If I can have these thoughts at the time, that's what was happening in my head. I need to help them to see that I'm a person and that I see them as people. And so, at some point during their time there, I even would say things like, "Why are you doing this? What are you hoping to accomplish?" I would ask them how old they are, just things to try to bring out the humanity of the situation and not just make it about whatever they were after. Yeah. So we got to the back of the house where they had entered, and he turned me around and he said, "Take off your clothes." And I just stood there totally stunned. I had never planned for what I would do in this kind of situation. And so I just stood there and stared at him. And so he tugged at my shorts and said it again. And I didn't know what else to do. I think it was that same thought of, I don't know if they would hurt me or my kids, but if I just do what they want, they'll leave. And so I did what he said, and he took me into the bathroom, and from there, for the next 30 minutes, the three of them. The other two came back finally, but they proceeded to rape me, taking turns. From that bathroom, they wanted more space, basically. So they said, let's go find somewhere else. And as we walked back through the house, I started praying out loud, just praying that God would protect myself, that he would keep my children asleep. I prayed so hard that he would keep them asleep, just putting his angels around them. I don't remember if I prayed out loud for these guys. I prayed that God would help them to stop or, see the error of their ways.
Did they acknowledge that you were talking to God at all?
No.
Do you think? Or
they didn't say anything back to me. Yeah. They stayed pretty quiet.
They were on mission.
Yeah. So we got to another area in the house, and at one point they stopped and they said, you need to swear to God that you're not going to tell anyone what we're doing, or we're going to come back and kill your kids. And I was like, I don't want to swear that, first of all, because I know that I'm going to tell someone for sure what's happening. Yeah. But they stood there and looked at me and said, swear. And so I did. And they then asked for another place. They said, do you have any place with a bed? And so I did have one other room on the main level that had a twin bed. And so we went there and it continued there. At one point, one of them did finally, I guess two of them went out. I don't know where they would have gone, but one of them was still there. And I kept asking him how old he was. And he said he was 18. Later on, I found out that wasn't the truth. They were all younger than that. But, just trying to talk to them. And they did. Finally, they started saying some things, but it really didn't make a lot of sense. One of them at some point said, why don't you come and run away with us? Or like, when's your husband coming back? It just didn't make sense to me, the things that they were saying. And we don't know if there was drugs involved or not, but I guess it doesn't really matter if it made sense.
Right. Right.
At one point, they all went out, and I was standing in that room, and I could see across my living room to the room where I had been sleeping, and my daughter was still sleeping. And one of them was standing next to the bed with the lights on, rummaging through the drawers right beside her, just not caring at all how loud he was, or, being careful. And I just prayed so hard, God, keep her asleep. God, please keep her asleep. And biggest miracle of the night for sure is that all of them did stay asleep through the entire thing and have no memory of that night. So they did find my phone and our computers. And
did they take all that?
Yep. They took it all.
Okay. So you were left without a phone.
Right. Yeah. No landline.
And of course not.
So
and nobody has landlines. Yeah.
No. And I racked my brain after they left, trying to think, do I have any way to contact anyone without leaving my house? And I couldn't think of a single way.
Right. And you can't leave your 4 kids in bed.
I didn't want to, no.
When you were just, it had just gone through this horrific experience.
I tried to remember, what clothing they had and all of that, like, excuse me. They were there. I'll just back up a little bit. They finished with me. They told me to bathe. I guess that was their way of trying to make sure that they covered their tracks, but they made me take a bath, not a shower. So it was just really not very thoughtful. Like, they left DNA all over the house. They did end up, like, there was a condom that was there. I don't know if they were able to use it or not, but it was left there. So, there was plenty of DNA to be found besides on my body. And so they finally had me come to the kitchen, and they said that way they were going to leave. They asked me to come and shut the back door after they walked out. And the last one left and turned and said, have a blessed night. And they were gone. So from that point, I obviously shut and locked all of my doors and windows. I went and checked on all my kids. I got dressed. I tried laying back down just to wait for the morning, and I just could still
because you didn't have any device.
No. And I just figured I'll wait until the morning, and so I don't have to wake up my kids or. And so I could still smell them on me, and so I thought I'm going to take a shower. I showered. One of my kids woke up and had to go to the bathroom. I took them to the bathroom and back to bed, and then just laying there, and that was really I had the rest of the night just to lay there and think about what had just happened. And, that first question, wondering like, God, where were you? Like, what just happened.
That's so real. Yeah.
And this image immediately came to my mind of Jesus standing there in the room with all of us when we were there and seeing what's happening and just sitting there crying, but not stopping it. And, just that realization of like, there is sin and they made a choice, and it grieves God's heart so badly to see this happening. But at the same time, not stopping it. And I've obviously had a lot of time to think about that for the last 7 years, and just trying to, you play over and over again the way things happened. And what if I would have been more aggressive? What if I would have tried to stop him? Or, when he told me to do something, if I would have like bit him or, just anything like that. And no matter how I played it out, I feel like it always ended up worse or more traumatic, or like it ends up with all my kids waking up and police at the house in the middle of the night. And just like, I can't go back and change it the way that it happened. And I just have to trust, like, okay, well, my husband wasn't home, but maybe he would have ended up dead, or maybe he would have ended up killing someone and had to carry the weight of that the rest of his life. And I just don't know what God might have saved us from, even though it looks like I didn't get saved. You know what I mean? I laid there until the sun started coming up, and that was the best sight. Okay, it's day. That's like the first sign I can start moving forward. And I went ahead and let my kids wake up on their own. And it was God ordained. They all had play dates scheduled that morning, that they were all supposed to go somewhere. And I was like, this is perfect. And I just tried to act as normal as I could for their sake. And actually, wait, let me back up a little bit before they even woke up, because I had like an hour before they woke up of just sitting there. And I got out my journal. And I was like, I need to write down what I remember about the night. I need to write down those details while they're fresh, and just kind of what these guys look like and what they did and the times. They had actually driven our van while they were there. Like 2 of them went apparently to the gas station and got a snack. Oh, no. So they have it all on tape, like it lines up perfectly with the timing. So I
more DNA everywhere.
Yeah. I put the key in a baggie and like zipped it shut so that was preserved. And I then sat there and I wrote a prayer for them, just that, God would bring conviction to them, that maybe something in their interaction in our house would point them to God, and that maybe they would have, seen something or heard something while they were with me that made them stop and think differently about the world. And when my kids started waking up, I was like, okay, guys, pack your bags. I made them breakfast.
Okay, can I pause you?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh my gosh. Okay, can I pause you? Because I'm getting the whole mom side of it, right? Because that's what we do as moms. Everything we feel, everything we're going through, and none of it matters when it's time to be a mom, right?
That's so true.
But I really want to dig into the hour before they woke up.
I mean, yeah, it definitely does go into just who God has made me to be. And, I think
where did that come from?
I think initially it did come from seeing I'm also a pastor's daughter. So I definitely grew up in a house of faith. And when I was 6, my dad got cancer and was supposed to die. And just seeing the way that my parents walked that journey, the way that their faith was strengthened, the body of Christ came around them, and just like was just seeing that. And then my dad, he was already a pastor, but then he used what happened to him to turn around and travel and preach, to tell people, like, I'm supposed to be dying, but I want to tell as many people as I can about Jesus. And so I had this foundation.
And you saw that firsthand.
Yes, definitely.
Yep.
And so just growing up, and like, I don't know how much that played into my own faith as far as never wavering. Like, obviously gave me that really good foundation. And I think like neither my sister or I ever rebelled. And we seem to have a good understanding of like what my parents say is true. They believe it's true and they live it out. And it was, so I don't feel like we ever had a reason to go against that, because what we saw was true and it was loving. And obviously that's not always the case. Like, I used to think, oh, my parents must have done it all right.
And right. Yeah. We all know as adults, we all know that wasn't the case.
So it's like, no, it's not like they were perfect parents and they had 2 daughters that were fairly submissive. And now I have 6 kids and I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm failing.
I'm hearing what you're saying though, is that you saw, and this is what I really want to highlight, is you saw faith walked out in front of you.
Definitely.
It wasn't just preached to you. It wasn't just read to you. It wasn't just taught to you. You saw, how old were you when your dad got cancer?
I was 6.
Oh man. Okay. Yeah.
So it was a part of all my life from that point. And he's actually still living. God did a miracle and saved him. And so he's still alive. And
so that experience at 6 years old, which I think will also be encouraging to every mom and dad listening, that experience at 6 years old informed your event. However many years later, to be able to, in that 1 hour, be like, I'm going to be smart. I'm going to do the right thing. But I am a person of faith.
Yeah. Obviously, faith was important. It was a part of my daily life, and I had carried that into my adulthood. But I think there's definitely that aspect of like, I had never really been tested. Like, I'd always just done the good girl thing and done the right thing. And it was like, yes, I believe it, but I haven't really ever had to go through anything hard
on my
own.
Yeah.
And so there was definitely, I don't know how soon I came to realize it, but almost like this, not pride, that's not the right word, but almost like feeling thankful that God gave me this test and being like, okay, how am I going to carry this out? Because this is what makes or breaks your faith, is these moments.
It is 100% what makes or breaks our faith.
Yeah. And I was like, I know all this truth from my life, and now I get to put it into practice. I know it all in my head. And now it's like, what am I going to do with it in my heart? And there was obviously a lot of questions, a lot of digging. And I think I was talking to someone recently, and it was almost like,
this is gold.
Oh, good.
This is gold.
It's like,
oh my gosh,
wisdom and gaining more wisdom, especially about God, is just finally saying like, I have no idea what the answer is.
100%.
Because we want to figure it out. We want to be like, well, this is why God let it happen. And people even say, I mean, God did not plan for this to happen, people. Like, he didn't want it to happen. But he can take the sin and brokenness of our world and still turn it around and give me the chance now to help other people. And he can redeem my own heart and make me a stronger person and grow me closer to him and more like his character because of what I went through. And I think, obviously, what we just said, like my faith growing up and my relationship with Jesus gave me that foundation. I think it has to do with personality a lot. Like, I am not an emotionally driven person. I'm definitely more level-headed. I want to do things that make sense.
Yep. I relate with you very much on that one.
And so, like, if the same thing had happened to my sister, she obviously would have responded a lot different. She's just, a little bit more emotional in her responses about everything. And so I don't just want to be like, well, this is the way it should happen. Like, no, everyone's going to respond differently. And it is a lot on who you are and who you've been shaped to be. And sometimes that doesn't seem fair. It's like, I mean, I know I keep bringing up my kids, but I look at them and I'm like, it's so not fair that this child is going to grow up with a harder life because they're just so naturally resistant to doing what's right. And this child is just like, sure, I'll do what's right. They're naturally going to have an easier life. And I'm like, God, that is not fair that you've created us with these personalities that one person is, that it's automatically harder to live that life. And I don't understand that. And I'm thankful for mine, but it kind of makes me look at God and be like, why do you do that? But I look at the Bible, and the Bible is full of people who I think were probably more the emotional type, like if I look at the life of Saul, and he was probably super emotional. He killed people. He was probably angry. And when I look at that, I'm like, that person would have responded totally different if something like this happened to them. But then look what he did with Saul, and he turned him around and was able to use that amazing energy and emotional and everything to totally change the church. And so sometimes it's easy for me to think, well, the way that I am made is probably the best because I just handled this like a champ.
I so relate with you right now.
But God can use all types.
Keep talking.
So I don't want people.
God can use all types.
He can. Yes. I don't want people to think, well, she was able to handle it because she's this way and she had this and this and this. But I mean, God can do it with anybody, and it's going to look different, and your responses might be different. But I think I remember at some point, even growing up, hearing testimonies of this type where someone would have had something really bad done to them, or like someone hurt their kids, and I remember hearing one in particular. Maybe I'm just making it up. I don't even know. But where this woman basically chose to forgive from the moment it happened because she knew that that was her only way forward. And like God had forgiven her. God was willing to forgive these people. And I think I just like remember thinking, if anything bad ever happened to me, I would want to respond that way. And so
you remember putting that into your brain.
I do. And I don't know if I'm making it up or if it's just something God has brought back. But I think
I have a feeling you are not making it up. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's not like I would have been able to tell you that I remembered that. But it's like, since this has happened, it just really reiterates to me the importance of the thoughts that we have and the choices we can make before we even know we need to make them. You know what I mean? Like that forms where your brain goes in moments like that.
It does.
And so I think even something that as tiny as that, it played a part in me. I think from the get-go, I don't really remember ever feeling like really angry at these guys who did this. I think it was
really
maybe more fearful afterwards. I was more afraid. But as far as forgiving them, I feel like from the get-go, it was like, how does God see them?
So tell me, yes, jump back in.
I was like, hey kids, before we go, I have to tell you something. And I sat them down on the couch. And
this is the morning after.
Yes. So it's like 7 o'clock in the morning.
Okay. Yeah.
I was like, guys, I have to tell you something. Last night while you were sleeping, some people broke into our house and they took our computers and they took my phone. And I don't have any way to call the police or to call Dad. And so we need to go and we need to tell Daddy what happened. And, they were just like, well, and God gave me this amazing segue into that because we listened to Adventures in Odyssey. And,
I loved, oh my gosh, Odyssey. I lived on Odyssey as a kid. How old are you?
Oh, how old am I? 35.
Okay, I'm 41, so we're within the decade of Odyssey. Okay, continue.
There was a particular episode that we had listened to a lot where the Barkley family has all of their stuff stolen from their Christmas tree, like Christmas Eve. And so they knew about this story. And so that's what God gave me, like in the moment. I was just like,
really?
Oh, guys, you remember this episode of Adventures in Odyssey? Like, people broke in, they stole that stuff. Well, that happened to us last night. And so to them, it was like this natural, like, okay.
They got it immediately.
They asked questions like, why would someone do that? They weren't angry. And I was obviously trying to model that for them, like how they should respond. But just like, okay, we need to go tell Dad. And so we drove over to the campus, like literally a 1-minute drive. And he was already in his class by the time we got there. And we waved in the window. He came out. And I was planning on, I don't even know how I was going to tell him. But as soon as he's in the hallway, the kids were all like, Daddy, we were robbed. So he heard that. He's like, oh, really? Like he walked over with them to this little snack table that was there. And he's like helping them get snacks. He's like, what'd they take? And I think he was just thinking they took something from the yard or like that. He's like, well, they took Mom's phone and the computers. And he's like, wait. They were in the house? And like, yeah. Well, wait, how do you know that there was they? How many were there? Well, Mom talked to them, and just there's like slow progression of information. Yeah. And so he stepped aside with me. But I was told I didn't know how to tell him. So I was like, just ask me yes or no questions. And so he was like, I don't remember exactly what it was, but like, did they hurt you? And I said, no. And he said, did they touch you? And I think at that point, my whole countenance just changed. And I think that was the first time that I cried. And he just held me. And from that point on, he was actually the one then that went right away and called the police and arranged for them to meet us at the house. We had people come pick up the kids that were going to be taking them anyway. We had friends meet us there he was a psychologist and he was there. They were like, you guys can plan to come stay at our house tonight with your family, pack bags. And from there was taken by the police to the hospital first for the examination that they do there. And then taken to the police station to give my full report. And it was just an exhausting day. I was so tired. Went back to the house. There were still detectives there, like taking all the DNA, and was able to pack bags for ourselves and our kids. And we never slept in that house again.
Really?
Mm-hmm. We went and stayed at those people's house. And probably for those next couple days, I was just, emotionally worn out. Yeah. And being able to go and stay in that home. This is a family we know and love. And they gave us their master bedroom. Our kids were sleeping all over in couches and spare rooms. And then they even let my husband's parents come and stay there. And I don't even know where they slept. She would I was laying on the couch and every time I would close my eyes, it's a little bit graphic, but I would just see a penis. And it was I just wanted to close my eyes, but I didn't want to close my eyes. And she came and she brought me this homemade granola. That was it was the best thing I'd ever tasted. She just stood there and she rubbed my head and my back. And it was in that moment, I was like, that's exactly what I need. She didn't even try to say anything to me, which looking back, I'm like, if I was in that situation, I feel like I would be trying to talk to someone, and that's not what I needed. And I feel like so many times, we try to talk to people and
we try to explain, we try and say, oh God, this and that, or life will,
And she was just literally the hands and feet of Jesus. And so many people were following in those days, but just having people that were willing to watch the kids. I didn't have to have any responsibility. My parents came, so the whole family was there. And obviously I said he was a psychologist. So we were looking to him then for guidance over the next week, as far as how do we move forward? Should we move? Should we leave the state? And he's like, well, that's up to you. Do you want to move, or is this where your home is? And I think for me, it was there was 3 people there that I was feeling a lot of hate towards, but there was a lot more people there that I loved and that I knew that I needed. And so we decided to stay in that town. 3 days, I think it was 3 days after, we had a friend, or one of our close friends, call, and he said, I know you guys don't want to go back to your house, and so I'm willing to buy it for what you have in it, and just to I'll just resell it so that you guys don't have to worry about that. We were like, that's amazing. Thank you so much. And then literally that same night, we had other friends come over, and he looked at us and said, I had someone call me today who wants to remain anonymous, and they said they want to buy you a house. And we were floored. We were like, what in the world? And that same night, we went out together, and we're like, how can we be feeling like we're at our worst? And yet we're somehow feeling this immense sense of joy from all these people that are coming around us and providing for our needs. We feel so happy, but we almost feel wrong feeling happy because of what just happened. And it was this really strange mix of feelings, but I think it's really important for the healing.
Yes.
And to be God is a part of this. It's not just this barren desert that we're going to have to stay in. This is a hopeful situation, and good things can come from it. From day one, we saw that God was there to put things back together. And we wanted to let him do that. And so we said yes. I think, there was a lot of people that wanted to help, and we just always said yes. We're not going to say no to your kindness. And I remember thinking so clearly, I want to remember this when we're through this, which is hard for me to even imagine, but when we're through this and other people are going through things, I want to remember what it felt like to be here and to have people just doing things without even asking, or bringing you something without having to be like, hey, what can we do for you? They just did it. And so we've definitely made it one of our goals to be more intentional in those situations, or when we hear people going through things. don't ask if you can do it. Just do it.
Just do it. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I've been guilty of that in the past at times. Let me know if you need anything. Let me know if you need anything.
Yeah.
And it's like,
our intentions are good.
Send them me. Oh, they're so good.
Yeah, we do want to help. We just don't know
100%
what to do.
Send the meal. Send the gift cards.
Yeah.
Take care of the kids.
Yeah,
this makes so much sense with what you said in the beginning as far as community being tied into it.
Definitely. And there's different parts to my story, and you'll hear more of them as I keep telling you the healing process. But there's definitely a lot of different pieces to my story that I feel like brought so much healing. And if any one of them wasn't there, I don't know how my healing journey would have looked different. And I've heard so many women's stories now who might only even have one of the things that I had. And they're like, how can I move forward? Because I don't have this piece and this piece and this piece. And it's just like, it breaks my heart to know that there's so many women who want to find healing, but it's just not as easily accessible. And I don't know why God let all these pieces be here for me. And he doesn't let it for other people. And again, another one of those things where I say, God, that's not fair.
It's real. Yep.
Yep. I mean, I'm pretty sure it was within the first day that I started feeling bad about what happened, or just not started, but just realizing like, oh my goodness, what happened to me is going to change my life. And just instantly hit with the thought of all of the women and children around the world who are doing this day in and day out as slaves. And they're tortured. And I'm like, who am I to be complaining about what happened for 30 minutes one time? And this is happening to these women constantly. And I think that definitely helped shape my perspective towards myself, and not to view myself as like, woe is me, I'm such a victim, my life is ruined. No, like, hello, Rachel, your life isn't ruined. Like, you have so much to be thankful for. And it broke my heart even more to even think about, like what women do endure around the world.
Yeah. Okay. So how did it end? These three guys, what happened?
They obviously found a lot of DNA. They started, I guess, trying to get DNA from small petty theft around town, which they wouldn't normally do, but they were like, if we can match it with what we've got, then this will be the quickest way. It was 4 weeks, I believe, 4 or 5 weeks that they knew exactly who it was, and they were planning to go arrest them. I got the call. I remember I was about to go in the grocery store. I got the call that they had just arrested all three of them, and they had to go arrest them at school. They were two 15-year-olds and a 17-year-old. And I was just heartbroken. I think if I had known that the night of, I probably would have talked to them differently, like more like a mom.
Like a mom.
But I didn't know that at the time. I didn't, I was a little more afraid of them rather than as a mom. But so they arrested them, and they've been in jail ever since. They did end up going through like the full court system. They were trying to get the two younger ones tried as juveniles. But because of the type of crime, it didn't get passed. And so they were all tried as adults. And it was a full year later, like the next summer, that we finally went to court for one of them who I think he probably came from a slightly better family and had more resources, and kind of like maybe he was at the wrong place at the wrong time, but he still obviously joined in and like participated. But his family wanted to fight more for him. And that was heartbreaking in itself. Like knowing that, thinking about that family, like your son, who literally is just this little high schooler, is just made this choice that's putting him in jail for a really long time. But that court trial was really intense. Taking the stand a full year later and like having to go back through all those details.
You had to take the stand?
Yeah. Just like obviously as a witness. And giving my side of the story. And it was just having to even read back through all the things I had said the day of in my police report. Like some of them I had forgotten. I had blocked those things out. And so it definitely brought more healing having to go back through the nitty gritty details and just face it again. It was my first time seeing him, and then I got to see the other ones too in person. And that was weird. I was really nervous about that. It's almost like feeling exposed. But I got through it, and it was the hardest. I feel like the most anger I felt in this entire situation was at the closing arguments of that court case, because they had a lawyer, which I don't know how lawyers can do what they do, because he's trying to defend someone that he knows did this.
Did it?
But the arguments that he was making were about my character and that I was a consensual partner in this, and basically calling me a liar. And I sat there so furious. I could
when your house got broken into.
Yeah. Like that's what he was saying about that night, and that these guys they didn't do anything wrong because she wanted them to be there and she wanted them to do those things, or she just didn't make it obvious enough to stop, And so I was livid. I just went home and had the biggest headache. I was so mad. I definitely grouped that lawyer in with the three guys from that point forward of feeling like you did this to me too, because you're defending what they did.
Yep.
So I think it was an important piece going through that whole court case gave me healing, because I was able to get more emotion out than I maybe naturally would have in my day-to-day life. I mean, like we've said, I'm a mom. I was busy. Yep. I focus on what's in front of me. And so it's definitely easy just to push those things to the side. And going back through those court cases made me have to face it again and deal with it. And I think that's so important to the healing process, whether it's through court case or through counseling, and having to dig into those nitty-gritty details that we often don't think about. It really does help you heal. So all three of them ended up getting convicted. The other two didn't go to a full trial, but I was able to go to their closing sentencing. And I was able to say a statement at all three of the closing hearings, and was able to look at them and tell them that I was going to be praying for them and that I forgive them. And that
You said that to their faces?
Yes. I hope they remember it.
I have no doubt that they do.
Oh, so I don't know though.
That's so intense.
Until recently, I felt somewhat at peace about the way that it played out. And recently I've started being okay, it's been 7.5 years. Did I do the right thing by just being I'll leave it up to the court? Because that was our mindset. We don't know what the right punishment is. We'll just leave it up to them. And that's what we told the judge, whatever you think is fair. They got convicted or sentenced to 40 years in prison for the break-ins, because they broke into actually other houses that night too. And then obviously what they did to me. And
how many counts of rape?
Ended up being 12.
12, yeah.
Yeah. And I just started wondering recently, would have it been more of a witness to the forgiveness and love of Christ if I had asked the judge for more mercy? I don't know.
For them?
Yes. Oh, because I'm that's so long to be in jail. And I know God, it might take that long for God to get to their hearts. And so I have to leave that up to him, obviously. But I'm just did I do enough to show God's love? Could have I shown more by saying I forgive you and I want God to work in your life? Can you show them any more mercy? I don't know. I can't go back and change it, but those are some of the thoughts that I've grown in my mind as I've grown over the last 7 years.
But your husband through this, because we're hearing your heart has come out from the second we started recording. Your heart and your commitment, your faithfulness, your trust in God, your person, all of it has come out very evidently. How did your husband handle this?
I mean, he had said before this day, it was one of those flippant statements. He would occasionally be if anyone ever broke into our house and hurt my wife or kids, I'd kill them, macho man.
Yeah. Yep. That's what they all say.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so I mean, obviously he was heartbroken. I think he felt a lot of guilt initially that he wasn't there, and just like, I wasn't there to protect my family. We had something else happen to our family involving one of our kids within the months prior to this that I won't get into, but it was like this things happened where he just felt like he was failing as the protector of his family. And so I think that initially there was a lot of guilt. I think he was angry. He may or may not have driven around our town with a gun like the week following, just like, not that he would ever plan to do anything with it. He wouldn't even know who he was looking for, but just feeling like he failed and he needed to make it right. I'm so thankful though that in those weeks following, he didn't necessarily show me that side. He didn't show me that anger, and
he knew that's not what you needed.
Yeah. And if he would have, he knows I would have just been all about trying to help him and like, trying to
make himself the victim.
Yeah. So he was super sensitive. Like, he was amazing to me. He was loving and gentle. He would hardly even touch me without asking. He was like, I'm so sorry. I've been a bad husband. I'm never going to yell at you again. I'm like, yeah, right. I know this is just how you're feeling right now. It was kind of weird because it's almost like, when someone dies and everyone kind of says what they feel about you. Like, it was almost like that, where I felt like I had this,
you expected to not,
this encounter that I could have died. And so people were just more willing to say those things and how much they care about you. But he was so loving and serving to me in those first 2 weeks that I was so drawn to him. And I mean, as husband and wife, you end up wanting to show that physically. And I was like, I didn't know how that was going to be, having gone through this experience, and I had only ever been with him. And so I was, but it was, it was within a couple of weeks that I was like, you are being the most loving, serving, caring husband that I want to be with you. And so God started healing in that area too. And it looked different for a while, and, but we've made our way, and God has been good to help me in my mind and being able to refocus my thoughts if they go to a place that I don't want to go to. So he's definitely had healing. I ask him occasionally, like, have you really forgiven them? And he would say yes. But it's also has, I think, a lot to do with the fact that, and I do want to make sure I point this out, like, we did not know them personally. So it wasn't like we have to go on living, seeing someone every day that hurt us, so that's an aspect that made it a little bit easier to forgive. They also received a lot of justice. And for him, that makes it a lot easier to let it go, because he's like,
100%.
I can let it go. I know that they're getting what they deserve. And so, and we obviously got like a truckload of blessings that God and the community of the church poured out. And so just like all those things factored together, I feel like made it easier to forgive. And I never want to make it sound flippant, like forgiveness is this easy thing you just have to choose to do, because I know so many women and men are in the situation where they are having to choose every single day to forgive someone that they know and had a history with, and it's personal.
And sometimes have to see.
Yes. And so I don't want you to think that I'm just saying that it's easy, because I fully realize that every situation adds different levels of complexity to it. But I do still know that there's hope. Like, God can still change your heart. I think when I started having those thoughts recently about, like, should have I done more? It was during a month that, I actually chose to try, like, if God would bring them to mind every day, I would pray for them. And so it was actually, I think, during that month that some of those thoughts came. And it's, it's amazing how the power of prayer can help transform and change your heart like that. So just to go back though, I won't get into this deeply, but I had great counseling. I always try to make sure I encourage people to look up EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization.
I do EMDR.
Okay. So,
Oh, girl. Oh, yeah.
It was transformational for me.
Big fan. Yep. Okay. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Everybody, can you say that one more time? Just so everybody can get it.
If you look it up, EMDR, you'll find it, but it stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And it's basically just allowing your brain to create new neural pathways to put away the information that didn't relate to anything else, i.e. your trauma. Because it can't be put away in your brain like a normal memory because it's just so different than everything else. And so EMDR, you're like going back and thinking through all of those traumatic events while they simulate your sleep cycle. And it creates these new pathways for your brain. And you can put that information in a way that triggers or smells or anything like that aren't going to bring it back as if it's happening again right now. I was able to have that within, the first 2 months, I think I started going and saw an amazing counselor. And I know, I could get into more on that, but there was just definitely things I saw that it brought healing, and it's more effective if you do it close like that. If I would have waited longer, it would have been different.
This is what I didn't even know about you walking into this conversation, but I love that you're highlighting is you had deep spiritual roots, but you also naturally did work.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think sometimes people can be like, oh, and we're Pentecostal. Okay, so we love the Holy Spirit. Okay, there's all the Holy Spirit up in here. Okay, so there's no question about that. But I think sometimes people can be like, oh, God will just solve it. The Holy Spirit will just do it. Everything will just be fine if you just pray enough. And what I love from your story is that, yes, you had a foundation in Christ. You had real faith. It was tested. You showed up in ways that you didn't even know you were able to show up faith-wise, but you also took natural paths to help.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's a huge part of my heart is let's blend it. It doesn't have to be one or the other.
Right, for sure.
We can have a both and situation here where we can rely on God and the Holy Spirit and community and everything that we really do believe the Bible brings us in its teachings. But we're also given, thank God, new answers.
Yeah.
New helps.
I went to a medical doctor after it happened, and then my brain needed a doctor too.
Yes. Yep.
There's so much that they know about the brain and our emotional responses that can be so helpful. And even just having someone understand you is amazing. It's all such an important part. You do have to work. It does take initiative, and it's not just going to happen by you laying in your bed all day and thinking about how terrible your life has become. You got to train your brain. You got to make the choice.
Yep.
And I think gratitude is such an important part of that. I got to hear a women's conference 2 months after this happened, where a psychologist talked about how being thankful and saying it out loud, writing it down, it actually changes the physical composition of your brain.
Yeah.
And we had so much to be thankful for. I'm like, Lord, thank you that you gave us things to be thankful for, because that helped heal my brain without me even knowing it was healing my brain, and kind of set my brain in that posture of growth because I was already choosing thankfulness. Well, I definitely have seen, it's been 7 years. I've definitely seen God use it to bring hope and healing to other women. And that's really my heart is if any woman can hear this and it helps her take just one more step in that right direction, it's worth it. You can't live your life just as a victim of what happened in a moment, or even, some people that I've talked to, they have a lifetime of moments to tell about, and it's heartbreaking. It's excruciating to hear. But I still know that there is healing that we have in Christ and through these resources. And so that's just my prayer for anyone who hears it, that your faith is strengthened and that you are encouraged to take the next step in your own healing.
Rachel, this has been so good. I feel so just encouraged in my own faith.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a joy to talk to you. And
thank you so much.
You're amazing at what you're doing. Keep it up.